A very happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to Fantasy Football Today DFS. My name is Sia Nejad, and I'm joined alongside Meg Shoup and Mike McClure. We've got 2 games left. It's the conference championships in the NFC and the AFC. Before we get started, I want to let you know that our contest for Fantasy Football Today DFS is live. It's in the YouTube comments, in the YouTube chat, and of course in the podcast description as well. Meg, 2 games left, and we play this thing a little differently when we've got an extremely short slate like this.
Yeah, I kind of talked about it last week where similar to the Showdown, which we'll talk about, on our next show for the Super Bowl, you are going to you are telling a story on short slate. And now we are it's just kind of an extension of a Showdown slate here with 2 games. You really, really, I think, want to tell a story in every lineup you build, and each lineup can tell a different story, but you definitely want to, have that kind of showdown strategy and really tell a story in your lineup. So I'm really looking forward to this 2-game slate.
Mike, if there was one thing for, let's say, somebody who doesn't play a lot of DFS or perhaps doesn't play a lot of like a 2-game slate DFS, if there was one sort of generic concept that you would tell people to lean into before making lineups or while making lineups, what would 1 or 2 of those axioms be?
I would say just don't be afraid to make strong stands, tell stories with the lineups, as Meg mentioned, and don't be afraid of some of the negative correlation. With only 2 games, you can play defenses against your quarterback. You can absolutely play defenses against your top receiver or running back. And you can certainly leave salary on the table as a way to potentially get different from your opponents. The other comment I would make on this is I'm submitting the idea to DraftKings, and I think that we may see it next year. I would love 2-game slates to also follow the Showdown format rather than forcing a strict roster construction like this. I think it would be incredible if someone wanted to throw all 4 quarterbacks in the lineup and 4 defenses, multiple kickers. I think it would be very, very interesting from a game theory perspective, and I think we may see it going forward in DFS. So if you like this style, also enjoy it. It's not going anywhere, but yeah, it's a unique test on a 2-game slate. Just don't be afraid to make stances. There's many scenarios where a guy like Terrence Ferguson, if he's on the field, outscores Devontae Adams, and you can build for that.
It's funny because we will get to cheat sheets again. Our cheat sheets, I don't want to say take them with a grain of salt, but obviously we only have 2 games to work with. So we'll probably have a lot of overlap, a lot of maybe some obvious plays, maybe some non-obvious plays. But it's funny that you mentioned the name Terrence Ferguson because, Mike, you don't know this, but it just so happens that my value play or contrarian play, one of the 2, is in fact Terrence Ferguson, one of the 3 tight ends we might see Matt Stafford passing to. Brock Newsom says, Showdown 2 gamers. Yes, sir. Yeah, I think everybody likes that idea. Speaking of the chat, the top 5 last week in our contest: Homer 727, Hydro 22, KGW 707, Yinzer 86, and a very familiar name. I think this guy's cashed like 3 or 4 times in our contest over just the last couple of years. MJ O'Brien 20 cashes again, takes down 5th place. Of course, the top 15 get paid in that contest. All right, let's get started with the first contest. Patriots -5.5 at the Broncos. This is a 42.5 point total. And just for perspective's sake, are we at 45.5 or is it 42.5? We'll have to double check that. Rams and Seahawks are 46.5, just so everybody knows. But either way, Meg, I'm going to start with you. This is the game that people don't want to get a lot of involvement in. I mean, obviously the implied totals are different and the pace of the game might be a little different. Your thoughts just coming into this game, are there players that you're kind of locking in on?
Well, I still like the next game. I really do have some interest in this game, and it starts with the quarterback, Drake May. Obviously, am a fan of his, but also have played him a lot this season, and most of the time that's worked out. I know he's kind of had a bumpy playoffs, but I really like him in this spot. We've seen quarterbacks kind of carve up this I really love the Denver defense. I respect the Denver. It's an amazing defense. However, we've seen some quarterbacks really get there, including our Marcus Mariota, to Josh Allen last week, Trevor Lawrence. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks on the back half of the season get there. So I like Drake May here as kind of like my primary stack. And I'm willing to I want to actually stack him with Ramondre Stevenson and hope that I'm soaking up most of the touchdown equity for the Patriots, and then be willing to do double or triple stacks by rotating in Hunter Henry, Steph Diggs, Kayshon Boutte, that kind of stuff, Pop Douglas, if you want to get more contrarian. So that's how I'm approaching, is really locking up the New England touchdowns and stacking Drake May with Ramondre Stevenson, and then be willing to double or triple stack with one of his receiver/tight ends. So on the Patriots side, that's what I'm leaning into. I do have some leans on the Broncos side as well.
And certainly, by the way, the total is 42.5. Apologies there. But the game day forecast, we're not going to see any issues here, Mike. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Drake May stacks are not going to be nearly, and again, this is all relative. We only have 4 quarterbacks to choose from, and a lot of people will just be choosing from 3, frankly, with Jarrett Stidham starting for Denver, although I'm not saying he's out of play. Either way, would you agree, Mike, it's Stafford stacks, it's Darnold stacks, and then people will look to Drake May, or am I getting that wrong?
I don't think so. I think Drake May will be the most popular quarterback on the slate. I think that the reason for it is he's got some rushing upside still, and do or die nature of the game, projecting, just saving a little bit over Stafford. I personally am showing Drake May being the highest owned quarterback. Stidham by far the lowest for kind of obvious reasons, but I do think Drake May will be very popular.
Interesting. Okay. I really would have thought it would have been probably Stafford. Anyway, let's go to what you think about the Drake May stacks, Mike. And do you like it? And what do you like on the New England side?
Yeah, I love the Drake May stacks. Like Meg, I'll be pairing him with Ramondre Stevenson, first player in. I think you can play Diggs or take shots on Boutte or Henry if you want. The priority on the slate, which will be for a lot of people, and I know we're going game by game, but when there's only 2 games, I think you really consider general strategy on the slate way more than just the game itself. There's 0% chance I would build a lineup without Puka Nacua and JSN in it. Yeah. Both of them. 0%. So because of that, you're taking 2 of the 3 receiver spots right away. I prefer to play Drake May, Ramondre Stevenson together and kind of get out, but I'll certainly have a lineup with Diggs, JSN, and Puka. As far as Stevenson, though, Meg kind of talked about it a little bit, and someone, maybe it was on HQ last night, we talked about RB1, like 1A, 1B. Yeah. It's not 1A, 1B anymore, in my opinion. It's very clear 1 and 2. Ramondre is a very clear 1 over Travion. And I think you would have seen that had you not had the eye injury to Ramondre in that last game. You were trending towards seeing it that way. I certainly expect that again. So for me, it's May and Ramondre, and then I have a ton of interest on the Denver side.
We'll get there in a second. I do want to point out, Meg, you were on the early edge earlier this morning. You have Ramondre Stevenson over his rushing and receiving. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it 70 or 74.5?
It was 70.5. And yeah, I was going to mention that too. I love to join you guys on early edge. Already had written it up on Sportsline that I love the Ramondre, total scrimmage yards. And so I also don't mind his touchdown equity too. So yeah, for all those reasons, I'm just like Mike, first one in for me.
Yeah, and for the record, I have his over 11.5 rush attempts. It's now moved universally to 12.5. I still like the over 12.5 rush attempts as well. Mike, you said you liked a lot on the Denver side. Talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll play Stidham lineups as well. You're certainly, regardless of what you think about him, regardless of what you think about, where the spread is, all of that, the sentiment on a 2-game slate when there are 4 total quarterbacks is too low. I'm still I'm showing close to single digits still, really hard to do with only 2 games, and keeping in mind in those 2 games, one of those quarterbacks, Sam Darnold, still playing with an oblique injury and is far from guaranteed to have passing volume and complete the game. So yeah, absolutely a scenario. We've seen Rams games, Seahawks, we know how good the defense is. It very possible that either of these games is the highest scoring game on the slate. And if Stidham's remotely competitive at 4,500, it changes everything. So I'll be playing him quite a bit. As far as the rest of Denver, I wish I could give you a better answer. I think J.K. Dobbins might play in this game, which changes everything. And there's a pretty strong signal that it's closer to 50-50 than we think. Someone asked in the chat, I said 30% right now. without diving into it, I would have said like 5%. I would have said, nah, they'll get, he'll play in the Super Bowl if they make it, right? One sports book allows you to bet on Denver rushing right now, just one, and you are only allowed to take overs, not unders on RJ Harvey. The other does not have either over under prop, no rushing props put up. The fact that you can't bet RJ Harvey unders right now is a very strong indication that Dobbins is closer to 50-50 to play in this game, which would change things quite a bit, in my opinion.
So let's just assume J.K. Dobbins does not play. Are you in on RJ Harvey?
Yeah, if he doesn't play, I'll play some RJ Harvey. I think he's just too good in the passing game and will be needed in the passing game. But if Dobbins is in, it complicates things pretty significantly. The one guy that I'm going to play that I don't think people will play will be Evan Ingram. I'm going to pair Evan Ingram with Stidham, looking for those short area passes. I think he's got some upside in this game. And then Lil Jordan Humphrey and Marvin Mims. Lil Jordan Humphrey's under 4K and Marvin Mims is 4K. That makes lineup construction pretty easy if you're trying to jam. Say you wanted to play Ken Walker, who's going to be popular. You can play Ramondre, Ken Walker, Puka Nacua, JSN in the same lineup with any quarterback that you want. As long as you play one of the Denver pass catchers, that is something that I'll definitely be doing.
Meg, the pass catcher picture for the Broncos is a little sketchy just because we don't know if Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant are going to play. The limited practices on Wednesday, we'll see about today. I do like Marvin Mims a little bit in this one. But again, are you waiting on the Denver receivers just to see what happens? And do you have any sort of take on whether Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant are going to play this week?
I don't have a strong take. From what I'm reading, it sounds like Pat Bryant might be closer to playing than Troy Franklin, but obviously the concussion protocol, you don't know. So I don't have a strong lean on who could potentially play. So right now I'm kind of working under the assumption that they won't. And so I'm like you, I really like Marvin Mims. I'm going to make a stand. I'm with Mike that I do want to have some Stidham lineups for that very reason. On a short slate, anything can happen. And if the quarterback scoring is down or he's right there and you're getting him cheap and low owned, I definitely like, as Sean Payton calls them, steady. I like some steady lineups. So I will be doing that. I'll likely pair him with Sutton and or Mims. Mims, I like a lot, like you said, Sia, because he could get those schemed up touches. We I'd expect a creative game plan here from Payton. And I like him kind of getting some schemed up touches. I was going to work under the assumption that excuse me, not Harvey. I just blanked on the name, but
J.K. Dobbins.
That Dobbins was out and that Harvey would be chalk. And if that was the case, I was going to probably fade Harvey. But, we'll have to see on that. But I was, Harvey hasn't been super efficient, but I do like what Mike said, that he will be involved in the passing game, likely in short area targets. So I don't think I'll have much Harvey. I will say that he as of now is kind of my chalk fade on this slate. But I wanted to lean into more of the Sutton Mims when I played Stidham, and so that's kind of where I am on the Denver side right now.
Yeah, I may be a fade on Harvey regardless here. But before we move on to the next game, Meg, again, 23.5 point implied total for the Patriots. We talked about how much we like May and Stevenson. We haven't really talked about the pass catchers. I mean, when you look at the props for Stephon Diggs, nothing's like super impressive, right? He's in the mid 40s pretty much at every book from a receiving yard standpoint, receptions in that 3 to 4 region. Kayshon Boutte, who's a lot less than Stephon Diggs, is in the mid 30s when you're looking at the receiving yards. We know his big play potential is down the field potential. He's 4,500. And then we got the rest of the guys, which are guys that are, might get 2 targets in the game. If that, Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, Efton Chisholm, but there's also Hunter Henry. Meg, when you're looking at these pass catchers, I know you want to stack Drake May with Ramondre Stevenson, but if you were to throw in another pass catcher, who would it be?
It probably the first one in would be Hunter Henry, just because we saw what Kincaid did last week. So I do think they could use Hunter Henry. Obviously, against the Broncos, I am a little more wary about the receiver matchups, especially with Boutte likely having to be seen more certain. So I think I lean Henry and then Diggs because they can kind of work out a slot and avoid Surtain coverage. So that's where
That's
I'm
a good
at.
point.
Yeah, and I mean the other ones, you could take shots on him again on a 2-game slate. Anything can happen. You can take shots on Booty. He's still likely going to be in my player pool, but because again on a 2-game slate, anything can happen, especially if you're getting some ownership leverage on any of those players. But obviously, the rest of the receivers are running less routes. Again, Pop Douglas would be another one, likely be working in the slot. But they will have Diggs operating in the slot as well. So I would say it's Hunter Henry, then Steph Diggs. And then, maybe I'd be willing to sprinkle Booty or Pop Douglas, but that's probably it.
Yeah, you probably want to get Denver in the middle of the field where Henry and some of those slot targets are going to be. Mike, any thoughts on the pass catchers for the Patriots?
Yeah, I mean, I still consider Ramondre a pass catcher too. He's still priority number one. Diggs would be 2. I could play Henry and I could play, believe it or not, Austin Hooper at 2,500 in a short 2-game slate. I think there's a scenario that he catches a touchdown. He's on the field enough. No one's going to play him at all. I'm not going to if I get beat by Pop Douglas or Kayshon Boutte and all of that, I get beat by it. Right. Like the only scenario that I'm playing those guys is in a double stack with Drake May or more. But just in an average lineup. I think it's, you play Drake May and you probably are playing Ramondre and then maybe one other for me. I'm not going to get cute with those other receivers personally. I think the possessions could be relatively limited, and there's, as much as I like Stiddy at his price point, there's a scenario that Denver struggles and New England doesn't have to do a whole lot.
So my Austin Hooper is Terrence Ferguson, which is the next game we're going to get to. Oh, real quick, I just want to cover this because there's a question in the chat from Jeff Busy asking about J.K. Dobbins' realistic workload if he comes back. Is it a 60-40 split with Harvey, whatever? Like either way, Mike, we're not considering playing Dobbins. And if Dobbins is playing, we're probably pretty low on R.J. Harvey, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think they're both in play. Dobbins will be 4K, so he's the stone minimum for a running back, which becomes more interesting. I'd have to really get some more information in terms of what the usage may or may not look like. I would assume that it knocks McLaughlin out of the rotation a little bit more, and Harvey's the third down back and gets more serious work and has his floor kind of protected via the passing game. I think that if Dobbins is in, it probably drops Harvey's ownership enough to where he's probably a great play still.
All right. We got to get to this next game, a game that I'm going to be leaning really heavy into. Again, in a 2-game slate, roster construction, we're going to play a lot of chalky people. Roster construction can kind of be the difference. So we're going to talk about how much I'm going to be leaning into this game. And of course, Meg and Mike, right after this message from our partners.
This isn't just combat. It's cinema.
Ready or not, here I come. Let's go! Are you not entertained?
The new home of UFC, Paramount Plus.
We're back on, I almost said the early edge. That was an hour ago. We're back on Fantasy Football Today, DFS. And I have a little programming note. Next Thursday at 11, we're going to be in between those 2 in-between weeks, right, with the Super Bowl. We will not have a show, but then the following Thursday for the Super Bowl, we will have our FFT DFS show. So next week we're off. The following week we'll be back with you. And Andrew Black likes that because he says, I love the content. Well, I appreciate that, Andrew. Please hit the like button if you could. And go ahead and rate and review the show on Apple and or Spotify. Mike, so when I was doing a shell lineup before the game, I went to this Rams-Seahawks game, and I was like, just like you said, I was like, I'm putting JSN and Puka in a lineup, and a lot of people are like, we're not getting different there, right? So I did that, and then I was like, well, who else do I want to jam in? I want to jam in Kenneth Walker because Zach Charbonnet's out. We'll get into all of that, and he's just going to get a ton of work. For the record, I understand fading any of these people to get different in your lineup, but I just wanted to do something that was like super comfy to me, and then my thought was, okay, I'm going to jam those 3 in. And then maybe I'll start to get different with my roster construction, with my lineup. And my thought was when I did that was like, all right, everybody's lineup, a lot of lineups are going to have these 3 guys. Maybe I add in Ramondre, it gets even more chalky. What if I just leaned into this game almost entirely. And I had like maybe the defense in the other game and like one other player. And I just went all in on Rams Seahawks. Does that get me different enough? Is it foolish? Just talk to me about that approach.
I mean, I think it can definitely get you different enough. It's so tough on the 2-game slate. In this one, it definitely becomes even tougher because there are obvious top plays in JSN and Puka. As you mentioned, Kenneth Walker gets a huge boost over his baseline, not having Charbonnet. So like they're going to be popular. I think what you want to do is just avoid the most popular of popular. We don't give full lineups on the show. I'm going to give one right now because I can tell you it'll be the most popular lineup on DraftKings this week, and you're not going to profit much by playing it, right? It'll be duped in the big contest well over 1,000 times, probably at least 500. Drake May, Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, JSN, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, AJ Barner, Colby Parkinson, and the Patriots defense. You can play all of that in the same lineup together. It's going to be the most popular. It's going to be the Drake May, Ramondre Stevenson with the defense against Stidham. And then it's going to be every obvious play in the Rams and Seahawks game. It's doable. Don't fall into that trap necessarily. It does project well. It looks like one of the best lineups you could possibly build. It's going to be heavily duped. So it's an example of the game theory itself is still going to be mattering significantly more than, projecting out and building the lineup that you think scores the most points. So, having said all that, I think ways to get different, if you're going to play Ramondre, Kenneth Walker, Puka Nacua, JSN, and at least one of Barner and Parkinson in the lineup, don't play Drake May with it because that's going to be the popular build. It's going to be that. Or don't play the obvious defense, like play a defense that's maybe against the quarterback that you choose, right? So I think that it's difficult to get different, but you got to find ways to do it. Some of it is leaving salary. Some of it is, again, when I talked about Austin Hooper and you're going to talk about Ferguson, like, is it insane to think that Austin Hooper gets the red zone touchdown instead of Hunter Henry and they score the same number of fantasy points because Henry does it between the 20s? You're going to be in far better shape if they match each other in terms of score by playing Hooper, right? So think through little scenarios like that you can potentially find.
Meg, you look at the Seattle side and it's almost like everything feels like a free square, not because it's cheap necessarily, but like it's really hard to get away from JSN at 8K and Kenneth Walker at 6,200. I mean, you could make Kenneth Walker CMC's price, old school CMC's price, and you'd have been like, I'm going to find a way to play him maybe because Zach Charbonnet is out and the depth chart just looks really, odd with Helani, with Velus Jones, with Cam Akers, depending on, who's actually going to play, who's actually going to be active. So are you in on Kenneth Walker and JSN? And is there anybody else on the Seattle side that you want to play?
Very much in on Ken Walker and JSN. Ken Walker is another, rush plus receiving that I like just for his usage and honestly what he's done in this matchup. So Kenneth Walker is a chalk piece that I really, really do love, and JSN too. I don't know that I'm going to get to much of the kind of tertiary or secondary pieces of the Seahawks. Mike talked about, obviously Darnold is still playing with an oblique injury. For that reason, and kind of just what he's typically done against the Rams. I believe the first matchup, he had 3 or 4 interceptions. I may play the Rams defense. You can play them. I may play Kenneth Walker, JSN, Rams defense, but not kind of any of the other Seattle pieces. So that's kind of what I'm leaning is just focusing on those 2 main Seattle pieces. I have Barner and Kupp and those guys in my player pool, but Kenneth Walker and JSN are the ones that I'm prioritizing from Seattle, and that will probably be in most all my lineups for sure.
Mike, there's questions about Kyren Williams from Smith Waller Jr. and some reactions from TC NFL about, Kyren Williams and whether you want to play him over, let's say, Ramondre and things of that nature. When I leaned into that lineup where I was just, all right, I'm in on the Rams Seattle game, I actually faded Ramondre in that one. That was like one of the stands I was going to make was get all those chalky guys that are probably going to be prolific scorers on this slate. And Maybe Ramondre, like, listen, I hope my prop hits. I hope Meg's prop hits, but maybe Trevion gets a little bit more run. Maybe there's just, Denver holds on to the ball a little bit more and the game script isn't exactly what we think it is. I mean, there's certainly outs for fading any of those guys in that game or this game for that matter. But any thoughts on Kyren Williams, at least from an ownership standpoint? Because like you said in the chat, it does look like he's going to get squeezed because of some of these other running backs we've talked about.
Yeah, I think he gets squeezed in a pretty big way, and some of it will be impacted by what happens in Denver if Dobbins plays or not. But if Dobbins doesn't play, then you basically have the entire field playing 4 running backs, right? It's Kyren Williams, Kenneth Walker, Ramondre Stevenson, and RJ Harvey. If Dobbins doesn't play, Harvey's ownership shoots right back up. Ken Walker will be the most popular by a mile. He will be at least 80% owned, and a lot of your contests probably 95. So when I look at Stevenson, it's easy to see why Stevenson's going to get there. The Seahawks defense is pretty good against the run. The Rams are extremely healthy in terms of the passing game. They likely are going to throw the football. So he'll be the guy that's kind of the odd man out. I personally like fading Walker in favor of Kyren in a couple of spots. And in doing that, I would absolutely have the defense correlated. So I'd be playing the Rams defense with Kyren Williams, fading Kenneth Walker, and then loading up a little bit on pass catchers, most specifically Cooper Kupp, someone who I think could get there in volume. You're playing JSN either way, most likely. But I do think there's a scenario where they keep Ken Walker out of the end zone and they're trailing because they haven't gotten Ken Walker in the end zone. And they're ultimately throwing a lot more late in this game.
Meg, the lineup I built had Matt Stafford and Puka Nacua on the Rams side, and it also had Kyren Williams. Again, that was my attempt to get different. And my thought was, Blake Corum doesn't get a lot of work. Kyren Williams gets in the end zone. But we see a Rams team, much like last time they played Seattle, in regulation, they had 30 points. So it's not like they had 37 because they got a touchdown in overtime. Don't forget, Seattle had the 2-point conversion. That's why they won the game 38-37. But I don't think it's out of the question that this implied total for the Rams from 22 gets blown out. And this Rams offense is clicking. Like Mike said, they're healthy with Davante Adams, who they didn't have last time they played Seattle. I don't really want to play Davante Adams. My point is, one way I'm going to get different, I love Stafford stacks. They're my favorite stack. And frankly, Sam Darnold's my second favorite stack because of the sentiment regarding his injury and people liking Drake May. But Stafford, Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams, and Terrence Ferguson, I don't mind playing lineups like that. I guess my question for you is, how fond are you of the Stafford stacks?
Definitely like the Stafford stacks, and I personally like them more than the Darnold side. Again, I'm kind of like leaning into Walker, JSN, and not Darnold. So I do like the Stafford stacks for sure. I was lucky enough to be on the early edge with you guys today, and not only did I write up Ramondre and discuss Ramondre's over rush receiving, but I talked about we're getting Kyren Williams a plus 120 anytime touchdown. He already has 3 touchdowns in the postseason, 2 last week, obviously. 13 on the regular season, 16 total, and we're getting, plus money. That's my point to say. I also like him here. My big stand, and it's kind of interesting. I think we all have different kind of bigger stands we're making. One of my big stands in my first lineup, I'm not fading Puka entirely, but I did a lineup where I did all 3 of the main running backs and not going to Harvey, not going to any of the secondary kind of RB2s on the slate. So I had Kenneth Walker, I had Kyren, I had Ramondre, all 3 lineups, including my flex. And I faded Puka, and I just got kind of that mid-tier receiver, and I felt comfortable with it. You're making, again, any which way we're making big stands where we're fading one of these RB1s, or if you're fading Puka, or if you're fading, or if you're getting creative with the quarterback position with going with Stiddy, these are all big stands. It's just what works. If Puka had that monster game in overtime, Davante Adams wasn't there. Again, everything you do will tell a story. So if I did fade Puka, the story would be it's because other players got there. Kyren Williams, Rams defense, Davante Adams, Colby Parkinson, something like that. So yes, I'm in on the Stafford stacks, but I'm kind of willing to get creative with it. And my big stand for this game is to play both running backs and Ramondre Stevenson and kind of not go to any of these RB2s.
Mike, looking at some of the, Meg brought up Davante Adams, and she brought up, I think you have brought up AJ Barner. Maybe that was pre-show, but we have some of these other targets that aren't going to get quite as much love. I'm looking at Cooper Kupp. I think his upside's a little limited. I think Shaheed, he's probably going to get less work, but you could see him having a ceiling game potentially. Kupp, Shaheed, AJ Barner, and we'll get to the Rams tight ends in a second. Devontae Adams. I don't know that I think getting to Jordan Whittington or Mumfield or Xavier Smith's getting a little too cute, but are those guys showing up in your simulations at all? Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, Shaheed, AJ Barner.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp to me is in borderline must-play territory. I like him a lot. He shows up a ton. So I'll be playing Cooper Kupp essentially as a core lineup play. As far as the others, it'll mostly be Kupp. To be honest with you, the Rams side, while I think part of the reason, we were a little surprised earlier, Sia, about the ownership data I'm showing in and projecting, not having a lot of people play Stafford is, I think intuitively, a lot of people think like, okay, we know Puka's going to get his, but I think people are maybe a little concerned about some of the other options and stacking it up in terms of what does the reliable volume look like for Parkinson now that Higbee's back and Ferguson's healthy. We saw Whittington on the field catching pass. I mean, they schemed 3 touches to Whittington in the first, quarter and a half of that game against Chicago. There's just so many options there personally. So in most of my lineups, the only Ram I have is Puka. And that's funny because I think the Rams win the game. I just think it could be a big Puka game, and then it's touchdown variance, right? Is Puka knocked down at the 4-yard line or is he in the end zone? And at the 4-yard line, is it the fade to Devontae? Is it Kyron on the ground? Is it Ferguson in the back? I don't know. So I'm going to play Puka in every lineup. I may play a little bit of Stafford. I'm probably not playing any Devontae. I'm probably not playing much else on the Rams side as much as I like them. It'd be the other lineup that's not like that. It'll be Kyron and the Rams defense with Puka.
Mike, is it fair to say that it doesn't feel like people are going to be inclined to play a Stafford stack with both Puka and Devontae Adams?
I don't think so. I don't think it'll be super popular relative. Again, you have to condition yourself. Like, I'm going to tell you, it's not going to be super popular. You're going to look and it's going to be like each one of those guys is 40+% owned. Well, it's 40% owned on a 2-game slate. It's not that much.
Meg, doesn't again, you never know what Sean McVay is going to do. Like, we don't know. Blake Corum might all of a sudden lead in carries this week. I mean, you just, by the way, his carry prop is 7.5. I think maybe 8.5 in some places. I think he's interesting at 5K. I'm probably not really inclined to play him, but Stafford it's a condensed target share. At least we think it is with like Puka and Stafford. But we also know that Stafford likes to throw near the goal line, and Devontae Adams is his primary target when it comes down to that. There's the tight ends that come into the mix, the Whittingtons of the world that come into the mix, but wouldn't a Stafford, Puka, Devontae Adams stack make some sense on a 2-game slate?
Oh, definitely. I like that a lot, especially if it's coming in at lower ownership. So yeah, I like that a lot. And speaking of, Sportsline and the picks, I've written up Devontae Adams 2 weeks in a row and it hasn't got there. I'm sure this will be the week where he puts them in for two touchdowns, but no. So yeah, I mean, he had the most touchdowns on the season with 3 touchdowns with 3 less games played. I mean, he was just a red zone monster. So we'll see. So that's why I definitely still have Devontae in the mix here, and definitely would like the Stafford double stack there.
I'm definitely doing that double. I might even throw in another. It wouldn't be Kyron Williams. I might be another pass catcher just to like save money on like Ferguson or something, or even Colby Parkinson, Tyler Higbee. But you can build, like, the pricing's pretty soft, right? You can build Stafford, Puka, Devontae, JSN, Kenneth Walker lineups, and then just see what you have left. And it'll be more than you think in terms of getting another solid player or two in there. Meg, do you want to weigh in on the tight ends for the Rams? I mean, it does feel like a bit of a grab bag. So I'm going to go with the guy that's the cheapest and gets schemed touches in near the red zone, and then Terrence Ferguson. But Colby Parkinson is not that much more expensive. Neither is Tyler Higbee. Any thoughts on those 3, Meg?
I did. I was actually going to put my hand up, so that's perfect. Higbee ran the lowest amount of routes by far last week, so he's the one I'm going to cross out. I'm sure he'll be the one that tilts me and gets like the first touchdown.
Sean McVay.
No, yeah, exactly. Sean McVay, hard to predict, but again, he has run the least amount of routes and was, I want to say his route percentage was under like 20% last week. So he's the one I'm crossing out. I like Parkinson the most, and then Ferguson. Definitely have both Parkinson and Ferguson in my player pool, but not Higbee.
Mike, of those three tight ends, who's showing up? And back to AJ Barnard, is he showing up as well? Just tight ends in this game.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have quite a bit of Barner and Parkinson, but I'll probably have either both Parkinson and Higbee. I personally think the Rams go back to the tight end sets. I know early in the game last week, they kind of went away from it, went way more with the wide receivers. I personally just think that was a wrinkle that McVay threw in to try and catch the Bears off guard a little bit because they hadn't really done it all season. I think now that they've done it, Seattle saw it. I think they go back to their normal identity, as Seattle scouted them extremely well anyway. So I think that they go to what they're most comfortable with in terms of operating. And some of that was a product of the weather and other things there. So I expect Parkinson and Higbee to be more involved and some of the other receivers to be less involved this week for the Rams.
Interesting. So that's another option with Stafford stacks to maybe throw in Puka, but a tight end or two as well, and see what type of lineups you can get, because not a lot of people will be doing that. FYI, I know early in the week there was some talk of rain for this game at 6:30 on Sunday. It appears right now that has dissipated a little bit, and that we still might see rain, but I don't think that's as big of a factor as it might have been on Monday. Mike, I don't know. I know you look at the weather sometimes pretty intently, but looks like it's going to be in the mid 40s, partly sunny with basically no wind. I mean, Mike, these are ideal conditions, right?
Yeah, as ideal as it gets this time of year outdoors. No weather concerns at all.
All right, because obviously that was a concern when the Rams were in Chicago last week, mostly for reasons of cold. All right, let's get to the cheat sheets. Mike, you've got a cheat sheet this week. I've got a cheat sheet, and Meg, you always kick us off, and you did tip your hand. I mean, listen, we only had 2 games to talk about, so I happen to know, because I'm listening, that Drake May is probably on this list somewhere, but give us your favorite stack, your chalk buy, chalk fade, contrarian, and value play.
Right. So, yeah, it's Drake May with Ramondre Stevenson, but open to double stacking with either Diggs or Henry, especially. And then chalk buy is going to be Kenneth Walker for me. He'll be in every lineup for me. Chalk fade is RJ Harvey, regardless if Dobbins plays or not. I think I'm going to fade him and lean into some other Denver pieces. I'll get to one in a minute. Contrarian, I think Colby Parkinson is going to be fairly low owned. I like him. I said of the Rams tight ends, Higbee's the one I'm fading. So I do like Parkinson and Ferguson at lower ownership. And then value is Marvin Mims. I think they're going to get some schemed up touches for him. Hopefully have a creative game plan to make this a fun game. So Marvin Mims is my value play.
Yeah, I love it. RJ Harvey is going to be my chalk fade as well. We'll wait and see on that J.K. Dobbins news. But even if he's not playing, I probably don't get to RJ Harvey in this one, as I'm really personally not getting to a lot of players in that first game. That's going to be sort of the stand that I take. Stack for me is going to be Matt Stafford and Puka Nacua. Chalk by JSN. I'm not breaking any news there. JSN, Nacua probably in pretty much all my lineups. Kenneth Walker probably in pretty much all my lineups. Chalk fade, like I said, RJ Harvey. Contrarian play, it's a grab bag, but Terrence Ferguson I could see getting 3 targets, catching 2 of them, and having a touchdown. And at 2,700, I'm willing to take a chance there as a contrarian play. My value play, Meg, I agree with you on Marvin Mims. Well, we got to wait and see on the receiver situation. But honestly, I think even if Pat Bryant and Troy Franklin are healthy, I still think, and I love what you said, like scheming touches to Marvin Mims. I really think, and Evan Ingram, Mike, you talked about him. We'll see him do that as well. But I could see Marvin Mims being really involved early with Jared Stidham, getting some reliable touches, the wide receiver screens, the quick outs, maybe some bombs too, just to get Jared Stidham going. Meg, did you have something to follow up there?
Oh, no, I was just shaking my head agreeing with you. I really I'm leaning into that heavily.
All right, Mike, and you lead us, you close us out here with your stack, chalk buy, fade, contrarian, and value.
All right, stack, it's going to be Drake May, Ramondre Stevenson, and I'll comment on it quickly. I'm going to play 3 of the 4 quarterbacks. I'm going to play 3 lineups. I'm not playing any Sam Darnold. I will play each of the other 3 quarterbacks, 1 in each lineup. Chalk buy for me is Puka. You could list JSN. I'm going to play both of them in every single lineup. The chalk fades where it gets interesting. If you see this graphic on Twitter and you're not listening to the show, you won't hear this conversation anyway, so it doesn't matter. But because you are here and you are watching it, what this means here for me is Kenneth Walker is going to be between 85 and 100% owned, in my opinion, on this slate, particularly in the contest I'm playing. I'm taking an underweight stance. I'm going to play him in 2 out of 3, which is 67%. So I will be underweight the field on Kenneth Walker. That's the best I can give you in terms of a chalk fade, because the other chalk pieces on this slate are Puka Nacua, JSN, Ramondre Stevenson. I'm playing them. So I'm going to get different elsewhere. One way to potentially do that is little Jordan Humphrey, 3,400, basically with or without Stidham, just the last play in there. You could potentially not play. I have to look at the rules on that again. I believe you have to play one player in each game. So basically be little Jordan Humphrey and then everyone else from Rams and Seattle. It is very, very possible for me. But why little Jordan Humphrey? Let's talk about that very quickly. So first of all, he dropped a touchdown, could have had 2 touchdowns in the last game. But number 2, he's playing with the backup quarterback. Little Jordan Humphrey has not been a starting wide receiver all year. He has spent most of his time in practice, most of his rapport with the second unit a little bit more. He has more rapport with Jared Stidham than some of the starting receivers do. Cheap price point. And then my value play, Cooper Kupp, 3,800. I think Seattle is going to be neutral or trailing in this game. I think they load up the box to stop Kenneth Walker and force Sam Darnold with an oblique injury to beat him. And if JSN's not open immediately, it's AJ Barner and it's Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, fair enough on the Cooper Kupp. I kind of glossed over him, but absolutely at 3,800 could see him having a nice game. I can't believe we actually went 40 minutes. I thought this was going to be like a 25 to 30 minute show. And honestly, I feel like we could probably dive into like different roster constructions, but I thought we touched a lot of different things. And really, Meg and Mike and everybody watching and listening to the podcast, thanks for listening, but more importantly, we're trying to give you, the cheat sheets are one thing, but the conversation is so important because we're just trying to rattle the brain a little bit in terms of like, well, you can build this way. You can build this way. This is who we like. And, this is who we want to play in this type of build. And I'm hoping that is going to get you all kind of thinking maybe a little differently and not just playing some of the conventional stuff. Because you don't want to be too different. You don't have to be too different, especially in certain contests. But, you got to be a little different. You got to take some roster construction stands and things of that nature. Smith Waller saying, thank you. Alan Presig saying, good morning. Loving all the good cheer in the chat. All right. I think that'll do it. I mean, hand up if you've got any follow-up. But Meg and Mike, we're not going to be here with Matt next Thursday, but we'll be here the following Thursday. Again, that'll be February 5th at 11 a.m. for our Super Bowl DFS Showdown preview. Don't forget to join the FFT DFS contest. And I guess that'll do it. Meg, I'm excited about these 2 games. I think it's going to be forget about the spread. Who's playing in the Super Bowl? Meg, I'll ask you first, and then Mike. I think it's going to be the Rams and the Patriots. Meg, who do you think it's going to be?
I just was about to say that. I think I said this on a show last week or the week before. Wouldn't it be fun to get the 2 potential MVPs or the 2, MVP quarterbacks in that race playing each other? And I think that's what we're going to get. I think May versus Stafford, Rams versus Patriots.
Mike?
I think Rams versus Patriots is probably what we get. I think the Broncos versus the Patriots can still be very, very, very interesting this week. And before anyone asks, Puka Nacua is a decent captain option in the Super Bowl.
That makes sense. That adds up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for us on Fantasy Football Today DFS. A big thank you to Matt on the 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. And of course, a big thank you to all of you and Meg and Mike. We'll see you next time on Fantasy Football Today DFS.